Hey everyone, I'm Victor Dwyer, and this is the Mind Workshop Podcast, where we talk about breaking open the concepts in our mind to really become a more positive person every single day. And today we have Hannah on, and we're going to really talk about preventing burnout and really focusing on igniting that spark and just really being a more passionate person towards your work and everything else. Hannah, please tell the audience about a little bit who you are and how you got into all this.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Dryer. I just wanted to say that I'm happy to be here today. So happy Thursday, everyone.
Yep.
And, I think for my journey to kind of cut it short, I was in the corporate healthcare world for 20 plus years and I crashed and burned in one of the hospitals I was managing staff in. So I know firsthand what it's like not to be living your joy day in and day out. But happy to say that now I fast forward to living a great and extraordinary life. And I'm currently the CEO of SheShatters, which is a burnout prevention company. And I'm also an author of a new book, Hello Head, Meet Heart.
That's amazing. And really kicking it off, what is it that starts the initial hard work to burnout? Because I feel like especially for me as an entrepreneur, I used to work 14 hours a day and I used to work myself into the ground to the point where I always got burned out. But I realized it was because of insecurities inside of me saying, I gotta be successful. I gotta work hard. Then someone will love me. And then I realized it was those insecurities that drove me to work that caused me to have that burnout. What do you find the underlying causes of why people work so hard toward burnout? What is your opinion on that?
Well, Victor, it's exactly what you said. I mean, it's the
Mm-hmm.
mentality in our world of you have to do this, you have to do that. You've got to
Yeah.
get a great job after college. You've got to go to college. You've got
Yeah.
to have 2.5 kids and a doodle dog. You've got to do all these things.
Yeah.
It's a lot of the shoulds. And I think, especially people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, we grew up with that mentality. And now we're seeing with the new generation coming up, they're getting smarter. They're smarter than us. And they're saying, no, we want to be happy and we want to be joyful about what we do. But back to your question, burnout really, a lot of people think it's because of overwork. And it is. That's part of it. But often it can be when you're in a situation for far too long and you need to leave, but you're scared to leave, or you know that it's not working for you, but you don't know what to do or how to find it, right? You don't know what's next for you. So really getting stuck in the mud of I'm not happy, and that vicious cycle of I should, what's wrong with me, and those dark kind of thoughts happen. But I think we're harder on ourselves than we really need to be. Sometimes it's just okay to move on. Sometimes it's okay to just stop and pause and say, is this right for me?
How does someone become more aware of their shoulds to where being aware that their thoughts are their thoughts and not them,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
then pausing and stopping, saying, because I'm a victim of this too, of saying I
Mm-hmm.
should do this, and then I'm like, oh wait, I get to do this, and rephrasing it in my mind. What is your strategy to becoming aware of those shoulds and to really start changing that to where it's something that you want to do?
Well, this is the $1,000,000 question, Victor. Why are so many of us stuck in our heads, right? And that's why I wrote the book, Hello Head, Meet Heart, because, so many of us are told you should be doing something that brings you joy. But then our other side of our, inner critic is saying, well, I need to make money. I need to pay rent. So it's really about marrying the two. What are you good at? What feels good? And then how can you live a productive life financially as well? Because you got to survive. So to answer your initial question, it's really about, and you have to change your mindset. But in order to change your mindset, you have to be aware. And in order to be aware, you have to stop. You need to pause. And that's something that I talk to my clients a lot about, organizations and individuals, is that so many of us are afraid to stop and pause and really take stock in what's really happening? What am I really feeling right now? And then tapping into your emotions, am I angry? Am I sad? Do I hate my boss? Or am I just mad at myself because I'm in a situation that I really put myself in? Your audience may not like this answer, but sometimes the job is not always the job, right? Sometimes the job is just a symptom of the problem. And sometimes you have to look internally and say, what do I own here? You are the driver in your own life. Don't act like you're a passenger. And so how can you get
Mhm.
from the passenger to the driver's seat to push forward and live that life you want? You have to stop and pause and determine that you're in the passenger seat first.
Mhm. It all starts with we always have a choice, no matter what. You don't have to go to your job. it's a choice. Now,
Mhm.
will you get fired? Yes, you most likely will get fired, but you do not have to technically do anything. There's always a choice, no matter where you go in life. And if you approach it from that, saying I have to go to work, I should go to work, and replacing those saying, hey, I'm choosing to go to work. Like regardless of whether if you believe that or not, you are choosing to go to work. It's an active choice.
Mhm.
And I think that's a big piece of it too, because a lot of people that are burnt out, they feel like I'm stuck here. There's nothing I can do. I cannot get out. I'm trapped in this, and there's nothing I can do to escape it. And they're kind of like they feel like they're in a prison almost.
Mhm.
And like it's really important to realize that you are making that active choice to be in that prison. Now, you could still be looking for other jobs. You could still be doing these other things, and you will have you just have to make that a priority. But most people, they would rather stay in their rut, basically, and rather be staying in their own prison that they built almost, and rather like be there rather than actually kind of making that choice to go out and going into the more unknown. And that's where they have to really make that decision where it's like, hey, I'm going to go the unknown. I want to try something else because I am feeling burnt out and I am feeling trapped. What are your thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
I think I'm nodding a lot with what you're saying. I do disagree a little bit in that
Mhm.
being a person who did burn out and dug herself from out of the rubble of burnout, I will say that it's easier to run towards something than run away from something. And that's where I would, talk to your audience and say and I implore people, don't leave your current situation without stopping and pausing and taking stock in what is valuable in your current situation. A lot of times, Victor, a lot of people, their whole identity is their job. A lot of
Yeah.
times, their whole identity is being a mom or being a dad. Like their identity is nothing to do with who they are as a person. And that's really the main problem is the underlying trauma of who are you? Really, that question that you're faced with. I think the other piece of the equation around burnout and around feeling stuck is it doesn't have to be a bad thing, right? So in my book, I try to turn burnout into a positive thing in the sense that when you're starting to burn out, it's the world, it's your symptoms, it's your body, it's your heart and mind silencing you and basically saying to you, okay, I'm not doing well. Here's where we need to start doing the work. And this is a good thing because your body's signaling to you like this isn't working for me anymore. If you're not listening to your head and you're not listening to your heart, your body will finally say like this is it, right? You're going to crash and
Hmm.
burn in the
Yeah.
hospital, you're going to high blood pressure, whatever it is, you're going to get in accidents. A lot of my clients come to me and they have bruises, Victor, or they're getting in a lot of
Wow.
accidents or they're injuring themselves because they're so unconsciously living this life. So, my advice at this point is really to, again, take stock in where you're at. Don't leave what you're doing. Don't make any big changes, but start slowly to explore taking a writing class, taking a dance class, taking an engineering class, like whatever you're interested in. Start to kind of dabble in those things. I promise you, just by doing something small, you will see a big change. It's also a golden thread and an opportunity for you to say, I like that, or I don't like that, and try something new. Often I think burnout is a sign of a dead soul.
Hmm.
How can you reignite your soul again? And that's what my book is about, is how to teach people how to do that again and what steps to take.
Yeah. And I think it also comes down with the ability to forgive yourself for not working. So when I worked 14 hours a day being an entrepreneur, it was I was so focused on like I got to work, and every second I didn't work, I would judge myself saying, "How could you not work toward your future? How
Mhm.
could you not be successful?" And like I would criticize myself for every second I didn't work. And then I found the ability to forgive myself saying, "Hey, it's okay not to work. Like I could work 10 hours if I want to. Like
Mhm.
it's not that big of a deal." And I eventually found the way to forgive myself for that. And I think it's really important when it comes down to burnout and working extremely hard to ask yourself like what is happening that's causing your particular burnout? Are you judging yourself? Are you having to feel like you're successful? Because most likely you're having some type of underlying fear that you're running away from, or you're trying to chase things to make someone love you or love yourself in some way, saying, I got to have money, then I can love myself. I got to
Mhm.
have this job, then my parents will love me. Like
Mhm.
all of these things that we
Right.
have underlying, and really asking yourself, why am I working so hard goes a long way.
Well, all the things that you describe are external forces, or
Yeah.
material things. And so when, I teach in this book of mine that I wrote, I teach, a mantra that's basically like, when the moment that you're starting to say, I need this, or I'm afraid of this, like the fear starts creeping in, it's talking to the fear head on. Hello, fear. I see what you're saying to me. I hear what you're saying. I don't believe you. And then just simply journaling in your journal and writing down the facts. Like, I have food, I have water, I have a job, I have friends, like I'm going to be okay. I think the other piece of that is that validation that you're talking about. Like, if I don't do this, as entrepreneurs, especially, we saw so many people work and become an entrepreneur, right? They're like, if you don't have two jobs, you're not having a side hustle, you're no
Yeah.
one, right? If you're not a
Yeah.
TikTok star, who are you? So I think it's
Yeah.
that like ultimate judgment. But the reality is, if you're in that mode, you're never going to be happy. Ever. And those people are never happy. That's why they're constantly posting pictures of themselves, how great they are and perfect they are, because they're trying to validate who they truly are. So what I would say is, when you start to feel and those words start to come out of your mouth and you're like second guessing yourself or you're judging yourself, that is a trigger. Again, burnout is cluing you. Go inside. Go inside. Check on yourself, right? Don't worry about the world. The world is screwed up. Everything's on fire. We're flooding. Everything's happening in the world. Like, we can only
Yeah.
control ourselves.
Yeah. And I always talk about how, like, this is the best time to always be alive. Like with the negativity bias, everyone's saying like, oh, the world sucks. The world's like in a horrible place. It's dying and things like that. But we create the story of how we want to see the world. So with these people that are in burnout and are working super hard, somehow their story is tied up. For example, you talked about people identifying with their job. That's part of their story. So if part of my story is I'm a hardworking entrepreneur, that I have to have 4 jobs and I have to work 14 hours a day. If that's my story, I'm going to validate anything that enables that story. But if you really ask yourself and take a step back for a second, say, okay, but why? Why is this my story? Like, why do I have to work so hard? Why do I have to have 17 jobs and like do this? And then you could really start finding the underlying pieces of it and figure out why you ended up creating that story. Because most people create it for some reason. And when it comes to this cycle of burnout, working hard, going through burnout, I think a lot of that has something to do with their story that they created for themselves as well.
And I think that it's important to highlight, that the story changes, right? A story, it's choose your own adventure book. That's what a life is. A life isn't, I'm going to be born and I'm going to retire and then I'm going to die. There are so many different paths. It's like Candyland. Do you go to the red path or do you go to the yellow path? So one of the things that I talk about in my book a lot is, your story can change, your situation can change. And it's like I said initially in the interview, it's burnout is healing from underlying trauma of what you're telling yourself. And for me, just going back to me, and I'd love to hear your story too, is, mine was, I don't have kids by choice. And so it was my husband and I. And so my identity was my job. So each promotion was like another notch in my belt of, you're doing the right thing. Like, okay, you don't have kids, so your legacy is this. And you're going to one day be a COO, a CEO. But Victor, when you actually asked me, do I want to be a CEO? The answer was no, right? It wasn't a CEO of the path that I was certainly doing. I wanted to be the CEO of my own life. I just didn't know it, right? And so it's really checking in with yourself to say, are you even on the right path anymore? 20 years ago, I was like, yes, I'm going to be the CEO. But I never stopped along the way to ask myself, is this still what you want? I got my MBA. Was it what I wanted? No. Did I do it? Yes. Then did I do it to get a job? Yes. So I think that's the piece. It's okay. It's not only okay, it's paramount to ask yourself along your Candyland of life journey, is this what I still want?
Yeah. And I think a lot of it comes from childhood when it comes down to that validation. For example, when we came back home from school and we gave our parents our report card, whatever it may be, and they say, oh, you got a bad grade? That's very bad. This is a bad thing. And then when we came home with a good grade, then it was like, oh, you did a great job. Here's a hug. Here's some love. And our brain attributes that saying, oh, I need good grades in order to be loved. And if I don't get good grades, I'm not going to be loved. And that same type of mentality, going to the external factors you were talking about, goes into adulthood, we're saying, I got to have those good titles. I got to be COO or whatever O.
Yeah.
And then people will acknowledge me. Then they'll validate me. Then they can love me who I am. And that same like grading, almost like high school mentality, like goes on all the way through adulthood, where they're always trying to have the better title, the better car, the better anything to look better in front of someone else, because internally they're hurting. Like you had a great point there. Like the people that are showing off their bodies and their cars and everything else, those are the people that are hurting the most, because they have to say, oh, love me, like validate me, validate for who I am. But the people that don't post anything and don't care and are happy with themselves, they don't care. Like it's that simple. Like they just like literally don't care about what anyone else thinks, because they love themselves. I think that's so critical.
I think the other piece to this is, not knowing who you are and being okay with, who you are in your 20s is so different than who you are in your 40s. And I think there is something to the midlife crisis that everyone talks about. Like this whole thing crashed and burned for me at the age of 41. Like everyone will be like, oh, you're on menopause or you're getting older. But for me, it was like, I just couldn't stifle it anymore. Like I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I'm not happy. It has nothing to do with hormones. It has nothing to do with my 40s. I'm just not happy anymore. But it is really interesting, Victor, that, so many people around kind of the 30, 35, 40 mark are like making a big shift, because it's almost like you're seeing at the end of your life, or it's coming, you're getting older. You're like, oh my gosh, I got to do it now. And that's why I'm so excited to see this younger generation coming in and basically saying like, I'm not going to tolerate working a job that I don't like. But I don't think employers have really caught up to that, right? Because those employers need employees. So I think it's really, I'm hopeful, Victor, of the future and like redesigning the system of work, of finding meaningful work, not only for an organization's benefit, but certainly for the employee's benefit.
And it's because there's so much more opportunities out there that didn't exist before, that you can be a TikToker and make $100,000 a year just being a TikToker. That's a thing. Some people make millions off of that.
But it's hard work to get there. That's what I don't think people highlight. It is hard work to get there. It is. Yes. So yes.
Yeah, it doesn't happen overnight, but it's an opportunity that didn't happen before. And the employers that are doing that, they want you to work a $50,000, $70,000 job, but people can go on e-commerce and set up a Shopify site and like go through all the right steps, and they can make that very easily, where before that was not the easy way. So people either have to raise their prices, raise their salaries, or they have to make the job more tolerable, make it more enjoyable and things like that. So that's why when it comes to company culture, I'm so big on company culture, is because like I think that's the best way to set things up, because it makes it where people enjoy coming to their job. They have a feeling of belonging. They say like, hey, like, thank you so much for what you did. Like, I love you. Thank you so much. This is amazing. And like giving that gratitude for what things are. And I think that's a big part of the work environment as well, that helps that burnout, because I think a lot of people get emotionally drained when like they have that sucky boss that's super negative and everything else. It just drains their energy and they get emotionally drained from that. And when you have a better culture, it makes it where like it's a lot more fun, because like how the difference between nervous and excitement is just the way you look at it. It's the same feeling. You're like
I call it nervited. Nervited is the word.
Excited. Sorry. Yeah. Nervous and excited. It's the same type of thing, but it's just one's negative, one's positive. So it's the same thing. It's either I can load up an employee that if she loves her job, she's going to be like this. She's going to be super happy. But if I load out an employee that has a horrible culture that hates what they do, they're going to be like, they're going to be like this, whatever, not happy. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, 20 years in healthcare leadership, you're speaking my language, but I mean, I think automatically my heart and my mind goes to, when I worked in the back office clinics at primary care, or, in long-term care in general, the staff are everything. I mean, bottom line, the staff, it holds the whole entire team together. You can have one manager that's a disaster and it can tank the entire team. And I've lived among it. I've experienced it. It is what it is. Bottom line, Victor, is it's all about connection, purpose, and collaboration. And those are kind of the three that I try to focus on. When I go into organizations, my goal and my job is to breathe positive light into a dead organization. That's what I say. because I'm often hired by organizations to change their culture and mindset. And the first thing that I do is spend time with the employees. I shadow them, I follow them, I talk to them like a normal person because they're normal people, and we have fun and we laugh together. And they say to me, Hannah, you're a relatable person. You're not even like a boss. And that is the biggest compliment that anyone can ever get, because you know, our job as supervisors and managers and leaders is to get out of the way of the work and make way, right? We need to be like the air traffic controller, but make way for people to do what they do best and hire the right people. And those people will stay. So that's ultimately, I'm super passionate. It sounds like you are, about employee wellness and employee engagement. But what you didn't talk about, which I'd like to talk about briefly, is managers don't know how to do that anymore. They're so focused on policy and procedure and the black and white way. And I do feel like we've lost a little bit of the heart in a lot of people's organizations. And, you know, I like to help organizations get that back, because employees are craving in it and managers want to connect with their employees. They just don't have the time.
Yeah. And I think, like, from an efficiency standpoint, like, so many managers or leaders out there, they just want to get the most. They go, Victor, how do you get the most out of your employees? And I don't think that's a good question. It's like, how can you help them as much as possible, and they will help you in return. So I'm not even client first mentality. I'm employee first mentality. I'm in the service business. So I have to like if I take care of my employees, like, I think my employees are always right. And if the client says something different, I'm going to trust my employees. Like, it's that simple. Like, I am so employee first. Like, let me show you how much, or tell me how much I can help you, and let's do it. Like I want to, if you have an idea, tell me, let's do it. Like, let's try out the idea and let's just see where it goes. And that's my mentality, to make sure that we, test out their ideas. Like, everything's kind of like, their opinions matter and things like that. And once you do that mentality, they work so much harder. So from an efficiency standpoint, they're going to work way harder. And if you ask them to do something overnight or whatever it may be, they're going to do it because they actually like you. They're not like, screw you, Victor, I don't like you. No, they're like, hey, Victor, like, you're a good person. I want to help you. So yeah, sure, let's do it. And it makes it where the efficiency is so much better, and the culture is just makes it everything, changes everything.
Yeah. You know, I was reading an article the other day. I love what you're saying. I was reading the article the other day about, someone had said something about, like, get rid of all managers, put in coaches. And that was a kind of a big bold move. But I thought to myself, managers should be coaches. We shouldn't have to replace. Like, that's your number one job, is to coach your employees. Your number one job is to know your employees, right? Know what makes them tick, and then coach them to that ultimate result. But when I saw that, I thought to myself, gosh, we're going to replace all of these leaders and managers with coaches. That should have been done like in the 80s, Victor. Like, where are we at? Like, why are we living back then? So I love the idea of just being patient-centered first, certainly employee-centered first. But I think also you have to know yourself as a manager and leader to know what strengths you need to lead a team.
And I just think, in order to create the perfect, like, I want to say the perfect manager, I know there is no perfect manager, but in order to create the most ideal person for a manager, there's just so many attributes that you have to develop in yourself that is so difficult. Like, when it comes down to taking criticism, being like, having enough love for yourself to say, hey, I'm willing to take this criticism and work on it to become stronger. Like, even that alone is probably the biggest human flaw that we have, is taking criticism and not having enough self-love inside of us to be able to take that criticism and deliver it in a good way. I think that's probably the biggest thing that we have issues with, even as a manager, even as a human as well.
I think reframing, I don't want to say criticism, but reframing feedback, criticism as a gift. So I will tell you, working with thousands of employees over the last 20 years, if an employee comes to you and gives you feedback, that is a freaking gift. It's a gift that they even care, because those employees that don't care, they will not listen to you and they will talk behind your back. But if someone tells you to your face and the truth, they trust you, and it's a gift. So open that package and, take it inside and grow with it, grow from it.
Yeah. And I always remove that kind of internal filter that we have as we grow up, and we develop these filters as we go into adulthood. For example, when we were a little kid, we called someone fat. Unfortunately, that's how it was. We didn't have any filters. And then our parents said, hey, you can't call someone that. And then eventually that's when we learned filters. And And for example, if I give you a piece of art and I say, hey, Hannah, I worked really hard on this art. What do you think? You're going to be like, Victor, it looks great.
No,
Yeah.
I'd say, what do you think? Are you happy with it?
And then, but if I say, hey, I'm working on my art skills. I know it sucks right now. I just need your honest feedback. I just remove that filter and now you're able to freely communicate. And I do that within all my employees. I say, hey, I like, let's just assume that this process sucks right now. Okay, awesome. What can we do to improve it? And now it's like, hey, let's hear all your crazy ideas. And now they're like, it opens that gate to say kind of anything. And I have to first identify what filters there are and then remove those filters saying, hey, this sucks right now. What can we do to improve it? And now anything, they'll say anything that it can really improve it. But I think from a manager standpoint, it really helps to have those and understand those filters that we have. So that way you can get honest communication rather than like the sugarcoating that we all do as natural humans.
Yeah. And I think being authentic. I mean, a filter, if you're authentic, you don't have to worry about filters. And I think that's the piece is a lot of people don't know how to be authentic. And I think it's really a learned behavioral skill. So
yeah, I totally agree. And on the authenticity point, I think when it comes to professionalism, you talked about like managers being so strict and like not very personable and just being very professional. And I think professionalism is just a big filter of who you truly are. Like for example, we can make this podcast super professional where we're talking like this and like very monotone and things like
yes.
that. But then it wouldn't be very personable. And I think that's where like that balance between being personal and professional, I think personal always wins because like, for example, between my employees, I use heart emojis. I say, thank you so much. I love you. Like, even though that's not professional, we have a stronger relationship. And now there's a balance between that, but that stronger relationship is going to make it where everything becomes efficient, that we have better culture now. And I think if there's a balance between professionalism and being personal, I think being personal is always going to win. And having that connection is always going to make things better in the company.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
If anyone's looking for a job, it seems like Victor has a great culture. So go ahead and follow Victor. I think he's hiring.
Yeah. And like, for example, I hire internationally and like a lot of them stay for a really long time, which like never happens. I've had employees for at least like 3 or 4 years now. And for having an international person for 3 or 4 years is very unheard of. And it's because like honestly a lot of them get treated like crap. My very first operation manager, she says hey, what do you want me to do? And I say, hey, what do you like doing? And she goes, I've been working for 30 years and I have never been asked what I like to do. And so it's like whatever you do, I'm doing it. Like so but that's where it was like a really big mindset shift because that's how I think. It's like, hey, what do I like doing? Let me work on that. And that's what I ask my employees. Hey, what do you enjoy doing? Because whatever you enjoy doing, you're going to do it better than anyone else. And you're going to be more passionate about it. Like, I think experience is always going to be passion. Passion is always going to be experience. If I take a 16-year-old kid and if he's super passionate about what he does, he's going to pass the person that has 30 years of experience like that because everything changes so quick. The person with experience usually is going to be stuck in their ways, and the passionate person is going to be able to navigate through all the different journeys and strategies there. So that's where I see like passion is a really strong indicator for being able to navigate through those things and really make a big difference. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think you need both. I think you need passion. I think you need experience. That's why I love, partnering a more seasoned employee with someone who's maybe brand new. So you kind of have energy and education and knowledge. I think in the case specifically around our topic today, which is burnout and igniting kind of your spark, I think the biggest piece is, again, know when something's not working for you and start exploring new ideas that do light you up. Which is a lot of reason why we had the Great Resignation. So many people were leaving their job because they were so burned out because it was just status quo, right? And then people asked them to return back to work. It's been this like seesaw and up and down. But if they were to really follow their passion, follow their joy, follow their bliss, or they had a manager that asked them, what do you like doing? there could be more creative ways of helping people stay, right? And that's why I instituted stay interviews. When I go into organizations, I actually teach the managers and leaders how to have conversations with employees around staying versus departing. Why do you like it here? What would you like to see happen? All of those different things where you're instituting a lot of kind of knowledge building and a lot of questions around, what is valuable about this place and what is valuable about you? And what do I need to know from you as a manager to help you pave a way for a better career for yourself? A lot of managers don't ask those I care questions. And a lot of managers don't know how to ask those questions. And organizations really need to understand that in order to retain and maintain a workforce, that they need to start caring, authentically caring and asking those I care questions.
Yeah. And sometimes I get so sucked into my business where everything is happening so fast, but I always take a second and like stop for a second and just like say, like, I'm so grateful for like whatever employee is working right then. I say like, thank you so much for what you're doing. You're amazing. Like, because I know in the back of my mind, they are making a choice. Like, regardless, it is a job, but they're making the choice to show up. They don't technically have to show up. They could drop off the face of the earth and I would be screwed. And a lot of managers have that should mentality, where they have to come to work, like where they feel like their employees have to do this, they have to go through that, and if they don't meet that expectation, they get upset. But I take the opposite effect. I'm grateful that they showed up and that they're happy to do their work, and it's like boom, cool, like let's go and let's do it type of thing. And rather than I'm just like so grateful that they decided to show up today, that they're here, and there's a balance between having that gratitude and being, I don't know what the word is, like strict, I guess. Mm-hmm. Like there's a balance between like, hey, you got to come to work, you got to meet your deadlines, like like that very business hat Victor, where you got to meet your deadlines, you got to meet your deliverables, but then also kind Victor with his kind hat on, saying, hey, thank you for showing up to work, thank you for doing all you do, and having that balance between like being that strict Victor and being that like kind Victor as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most bang that I got from my book and what I teach managers and leaders and organizations today is, we're all in the boat together. If I'm a manager, I have a title. That is all I have, but I'm also a worker. I have skills that I'm good at and I have skills that I'm bad at, right? And so the first thing I do when I get hired or I teach other managers to do is say, tell your team what you're good at and what you struggle with, so that right away they know who you are as a person and that you're being vulnerable and saying like, hey, I'm not amazing, right? Like I don't have everything going for me, right? I'm still a human. And then the employees then feel comfortable to say, well, hey, I'm good at this too, and I'm good at this. I mean, if everyone on the team comes together and there's a goal, a North Star or central project, and I know Victor's good at this, but I'm good at this, then we would partner and pair together. So I think it's really important that it's not a hierarchical, that it's more a circular management leadership approach where there's some days that you're going to need me and there's some days that I'm going to need you. And that's a team approach. And I think that's always really done well. That approach has always functioned really well because, we all have different roles, but we all need each other on the same bus. And then if they don't have me, they'll survive. If I don't have them, I'll survive. But we need each other to be stronger.
Yeah. And this is an important topic that I want to cover is the ability to find that spark. So what would you say to someone that doesn't know what they're passionate about, that knows a little bit about their interests, but doesn't really know how to find a thing that they're passionate about and get paid for? What would your advice be to someone to really help find their passion and find things that interest them?
Yes, love the question. So I do this every day with all of my clients. And the first thing that I ask them to do is buy a notebook, something fun, whatever they want to do, Amazon, go to Fred Meyer, wherever, and it's the notebook just for them. And it's like in grade school, that black and white composition notebook that we would all get. We'd write our names on and we'd play MASH or we'd do all these different things in these notebooks that we don't want anyone to know about. This notebook is just for you. And this is an opportunity for people, my clients, your listeners today to do this. And it's an exercise. So the exercise is write down on a single piece of paper all of the people that inspire you, motivate you, think about. Like for me, it's, Michelle Obama, Glennon Doyle, Abby Wambach, all of these incredible women that I'm like, they are powerhouses. So I write a list of them down. And then next to it, it's why. Line down the middle, why do they inspire you? And specifically then of those traits. And then after you're done with your list, on a second piece of paper, I want you to write down your Hannah mission statement or your Victor mission statement, which is for me, my mission is to provide light and brevity and fun and contagious energy and people spark, bring it into the world, right? I want to breathe life into dead people and dead organizations, not literally dead people, but people who are feeling dead inside. And so for me, I knew that I needed to do something that empowered and lit people up again. Now, Victor, you know as well as I do that there's so many things that could do and meet that quota, that meet that expectation. But for you and for this exercise, the purpose of the exercise, it's to inspire you of those people in your life that inspire you. And then to write down on the right side what you truly want to be doing, right? Like if you really knew me, you would know that I love to XYZ. I love to talk with people. I love to communicate. I love to build. I love to create. And you're just going to exhaust that list. And that's really an opportune, concrete way for you to just kind of exhaust everything that's in your head, everything that's out of your heart, and it's going to be down on paper. And then it's going to be picking those off as a golden thread. I know that I wanted more creativity. So what did I do? I took an art class. I knew that I wanted to write a book. I was scared to death. I didn't know what I wanted to write about or how it was going to happen. So I took a writing class. 8 months later, I launched a best-selling book. Like, who would have thought that would ever happen? So you have to follow those little golden threads of small things that excite you, interest you. It can be as simple as you love watching reality TV, you love the drama, whatever it is, following that golden thread, but documenting and writing down as proof on a piece of paper what exactly you're interested in. Because I don't buy that nobody has one single interest. There is something. Someone loves their cat. They love Grubhub. They love something, right?
Yeah.
And so write that down as proof of what you are interested in and follow that thread and take a class, watch a YouTube video, listen to a podcast, read a book on it, whatever, and follow that golden thread and see what happens. You're just kind of testing your feet in the creativity water. You will feel much better because you're surrounding yourself around things you like and that get you excited again.
Yeah. And I think it's so important to realize that all passion is multiple streams of curiosity as well. So when we become, like, for example, I'll use me as an example. I was always interested in how the brain worked. And I was always interested in like A/B testing. And I was always interested in testing like the most efficient way. And that's when I found marketing. Marketing is the way I combine both of those, where like if I give you an ad with a blue banner and an ad with an orange banner, your brain's going to pick the orange banner. And that's always been fascinating to me. And so that's kind of why I got into the marketing world, because I was able to combine both curiosities and really turn that into a passion. So like I would find out what really makes you curious, things that naturally make you curious, and like dive deeper into it. Because the more you dive into that curiosity, the more you'll be interested in it. There's a reason why your brain found that interesting. Every brain is different, but there's a reason why it found it interesting. So the more you dive into it, the more energy you will have toward it, and eventually it will turn into a passion. So that's just some like icing on the cake there when it comes down to curiosities and passions as well.
Yeah, I mean, we said basically the same thing. I was just giving an example of an exercise that someone can do, because I think what people need right now is not just a quote. They need to know how to do it. And that's what's different about my book is it's a how-to book. And for the first time, one of my readers said to me, this is a self-help book that actually helps. Like, I'm tired of listening to podcasts that just say cliche things. People want real results and real action steps. And that's what this is.
That's great. That's awesome. And is there any other actionable steps that you have? Either it could be related toward finding your passion, it could be related to burnout, or anything else that we kind of mentioned. Do you have any other actionable steps for any of viewers out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest piece is a sense of loneliness. There's so many listeners and readers that come to me and say, after reading your book, I feel so much better. I feel like I'm not alone. There are so many people out there, Victor, that are suffering from burnout and frankly, getting close to worrying about ending their life. I've had a lot of people who have said to me, I'm concerned that I'm worthless. I have nothing left to give. And so I want to just say to anyone who's listening or anyone who's watching, if you're at that dark place, know that you are not alone. Know that there is hope after burnout. And if you need any help, please reach out to those people around you. Certainly Victor, myself, we are all here to help you because there is life after burnout. I'm absolute proof of it. So thank you.
Yeah. And is there anything else that's been top of mind for you lately that you think is really important to cover, or really think like that you've been seeing when it comes down to really just becoming a happier person or anything else like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people around me are speaking right now about purpose and alignment and really trying to find out what truly lights them up. And I think fear is a really big piece, Victor. We
Mhm.
touched on it a little bit during the conversation about inner critic and the shoulds and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I think, fear and how to break through that fear and get through to the other side. And a lot of people talk about fear of failure, but more and more I'm speaking to my clients, and especially after, people are reading my book, they're saying, I never realized that what is on the opposite side of fear is so much better than I could have ever imagined. So I think just
Yeah.
leaders like you and I and people in the industry really need to stress the importance of stepping over that line of fear, because there's so much opportunity when you get on that creative side, and your life could be in technicolor. Like, so many of people are living a black and white life, but there's so much more than what's outside your box. So take that risk and take that leap, and don't settle for, an ordinary life.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, on that note, we'll make that the mic drop. And unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. Hannah, please tell your audience how to find you, get in contact with you, to find your book, and all that information.
Sure. You guys can visit me on SheShatters.com and on Instagram at SheShatters LLC, and then grab the book on Amazon. And we just got in the biggest bookstore in the world in Portland, Oregon, called Powell's. So come see me. You'll Google Hannah Austin or Hello Head Meet Heart online.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I want to thank
Thank
all our
you.
viewers for engaging with our live session here today at the Mind Workshop Podcast. Great news, guys. The Mind Workshop Podcast will be on Spotify and Apple Podcast in September. You'll be able to tune into your favorite episodes on the go. And again, we are live every Wednesday and Thursday from 12 to 3 Central Time. All possible made by CrossSkills VAs. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. Hannah, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks,
That's all.
Victor.